Angie, and I will be your facilitator for today's session. I'm connecting from Chihuahua, Mexico. So here in Chihuahua, it's 8 a.m. And I know that there's people connecting from India, from the Philippines, from Indonesia, from Mexico, from Ghana, from Armenia, from Nepal. So I welcome each one of you to this session. I'm gonna share my screen now, so just give me 1 second and we can begin. Okay. So we are now ready to begin this webinar that was created for you to have at least 3 ideas on how to use dialogue as a tool to raise awareness for the Sustainable Development Goals. So we are going to, first of all, think about these central questions. And I would like to invite you to think about how can dialogue enrich the comprehension of global issues? Because we know that dialogue is a powerful tool when it comes to reflecting, when it comes to using critical thinking, when it comes to practicing active listening, and of course, when it comes to questioning and challenging one another. And when you're talking about this, the Sustainable Development Goals, and you are introducing the students to the most important global issues, it is your best ally. So we are also going to start reflecting as we move forward in today's webinar to what types of activities can be used. So in this webinar, we are going to, I will present to you 3 different activities that are ready to use. All of them are low-tech activities, which means that you don't need to use the internet or any other, connectivity resource. It is just something that you can do with what you have in the classroom. And it is something that will keep your students moving and engaged. So also having interactive activities is good when you're speaking about such global issues. So these are the 3 central questions that we will be reflecting in today's webinar. But first of all, I would like to ask you to reflect on what does dialogue mean to you. Now, I am going to introduce you on the next slide, 5 images, and I will, if you please share your answer in the chat. So in that way we can take a look at what you are thinking as an image when it comes to dialogue. So you can see these 5 images now. Now please use the chat to share your preference, if it's number 1, or if it is, in this case, number 2, or number 3, number 4, or number 5. And we'll go and define that. So we can see that Ektua and Jigme are choosing number 3, number 5. So I thank everyone who is participating. And in this reflection of the image that you're selecting, think about how or why did you selected that image? What does it represent to you? Because this is a way for us to get started into what dialogue is and into what you can do as an educator to reinforce these dialogue skills in your classroom. So I thank everyone. I see some of you have selected 3 or 4. That's okay. It means that you could probably have many uses for dialogue. So thank you for sharing your answers. It helps us to get started. And now we're going to discuss, all right? We're going to discuss what dialogue is as a way of getting us started. So I see that some of you are sharing the reflections in the chat, what you understand about this definition. So dialogue, we define dialogue here at Generation Global as an encounter. And it's beautifully described, right? It's an encounter where participants learn from one another, where they are open to understanding other people's values and perspectives and experiences and beliefs. So when you define dialogue as this encounter, imagine that you are in the classroom and you are providing the students with a space that is safe, that is brave, that is inclusive, and where your students can have that encounter. It is also about reciprocity, because in a dialogue, in this a conversation that we as human beings have, it has to be reciprocal. So you actively listen, you reflect, you give your point of view, you do it with respect, and in a sense, you're also acknowledging your similarities and differences. So reading what you are sharing in the chat, I see that all of you have shared in some way or another the definition of dialogue. So I see that you say represents acceptance, or it's about interaction and reflection. It's about sharing your thoughts, you're listening, understanding one another. So using dialogue as a tool for discussing the most pressing issues in our society today is something that will make us, our students, reflect and start from a very, very, very human point of view, and to the basic that we have, that is communication. Okay, so here at Generation Global, we use, and for those of you who already use our material, our platform, the Ultimate Dialogue Adventure, or even some of the materials that we have available for teachers on different topics, we use and we introduce dialogue skills as 5 major skills that you need to foster in your students. So first of all, dialogue skills are based on active listening. And as I was saying, is one of the most basic and natural things we do as human beings. So teaching your students how to actively listen to one another, teaching your students how to critically think about what they hear so they can reflect it better, so that they can connect it to their own experiences and communicate through global communication, through sharing what they think, what they believe, what they have lived, right? And this paves the way for students to ask meaningful questions. So if we are trying to, like you said in the chat, understand one another, unlock new perspectives, even have a dialogue as a first step of pairing students, of pair work, it is important also to consider that young people need to have these 5 skills. These are 5 skills that no matter what, they are super important for their future. When growing up, or when they grow up, when they develop, they are becoming global citizens. They are becoming open-minded global citizens and are able to navigate these complex issues, these ambiguous topics sometimes, and that at the end is good for them, because not only these 5 skills are super important, but that they also develop other important skills, like what Fefli is mentioning in the chat, like problem solving, for example. So let's take like a reflection on these 5 skills, and because we are going to think about them when I introduce you to the activities. And it is also important to recognize that dialogue has benefits for your students. Now, first of all, well, it's important to use dialogue, or to practice dialogue, or to use it as a teaching tool, because it cultivates diversity skills. So if you are making your classroom an inclusive space, if you are introducing the students to very diverse points of view or perspectives, or even new topics that maybe have to do with human rights or climate change or the future of work, well, you need to foster those topics from a very inclusive perspective. Because in a sense, what you're trying to do is to give them the opportunity to become global citizens by appreciating diversity, by having open-mindedness. So when you practice bringing closer those topics that might be complex for students to understand, you are also working on the open-mindedness of your students. And of course, what I mentioned before, global citizenship, dialogue is a tool that will actively strive to help your students become global citizens. First of all, because it broadens their horizons in terms of perspectives, in terms of new ideas, but also because it invites our students to have self-reflection. When our students are self-aware of their own identity, then they can respect other people's identities. They can connect to other people's point of view. They can learn more from their identity when they have dialogue and they learn from another person. So self-reflection is also one of those things that will help if you bring dialogue to your class. Of course, when you're talking about the exchange of ideas, this is the core of dialogue, right? And you mentioned this in the chat. So as it brings closer the different points of view, it could also be a good idea to use dialogue for active citizenship topics or for civic engagement. So not only for understanding topics, but also to let them know how they can be more active, how they can create actions towards a better future in their communities, in their country, globally. So in that sense, you are giving them the chance to explore the solutions. Important also is to consider that when you have a dialogue, the students, they learn to respect one another. And in a sense, they create, with the help of the teacher, of course, these safe spaces where the students feel included, where they feel heard, where they feel respected. And that's what at the end is the basis for a deeper understanding. So when you are exploring these complex topics, you need a safe space. And once you feel very comfortable sharing and learning and asking questions, then you are fostering also intellectual growth. So deeper understanding of topics is another thing that is very meaningful when it comes to dialogue. And of course, dialogue helps you build better relationships in the classroom. So you can improve a common understanding, a set of rules, even to have difficult dialogue in the class, or to start talking about things that perhaps are happening in your country, in your community, but that are pretty hard to talk about. So it's another way to start bringing down these ideas step by step into the classroom. So these are 8 of the most important benefits that dialogue brings to your class. And now let's take a look at the first activity. And I will introduce you to the activity. And after that, we will have a hands-on approach where I know we are 150 people connected right now. So I really hope that we could be in person and that this could happen in a classroom setting so that each of us can take a look at one another. Let's imagine that we are in that place. We're actually in that place digitally, but there will be a chance for some of you to participate. So in a sense, we are going to look at how these examples of activities can, what's the result when you do it in the classroom. But right now we're going to do it virtually, and some of you, just a few of you, will participate in this activity. So first, I introduce the activity, and then we have a hands-on approach. So let's get started. This is the first activity that I have curated for this webinar. And it's a very, very simple activity. It kind of helps you to get you started if what you're trying to do is to bring your students closer to the understanding of the SDGs. So you want to facilitate a conversation where they can, first of all, practice dialogue and the skills of dialogue that I have discussed with you in the previous slides, but also to make them understand what's the importance of the SDGs. So in this sense, the only material you need, it's a long string or a yarn, and you will probably have, I don't know, 30 to 45 minutes, even 60 minutes for this activity. The dialogue skills that your students will be practicing are, of course, active listening, also global communication, and critical thinking. So it is those three skills, the ones that you can easily see in this activity, but it doesn't mean that the other ones are not there, or even some other skills. Because sometimes the students surprise you with the most amazing responses in their dialogue, in their conversation. So it's also good to be open and observing, oh, what else happened? What else I saw when the students were practicing this activity? All right. Yes, just as a reminder, this session is being recorded. So don't worry about it. You will have access to the recording of the session in our YouTube channel. So you can see this and you can pause it and even go back and check what you find most interesting. All right, so let's see what are the steps for this activity that is called the SDGs. Okay, I think I'm back. I was muted, but I am back. All right, so let's see the first step. Well, the first thing that you need to do is, of course, introduce the concept of sustainable development goals and explain the significance of what the SDGs are, why are they important, perhaps even asking or explaining to your students why were they created. So you can easily do this perhaps by pointing out in the classroom the 17 SDGs, or perhaps bringing an image, or you know, just explaining to them what the SDGs are. I will invite you then to gather the students in a circle. They're standing up. Everyone can be able to reach and pass the string. Remember that we're creating a spider web. And then one student will begin. It will hold the string into one point. It would toss it to another student. And when that student receives the string, it would share why they think the SDGs are important, why they believe a specific SDG is important. So you can instruct the students to reflect on what they hear and to contribute to what they are listening, or to add a new idea, or perhaps to ask a question so that the next person that receives the string answers that question. So in this sense, you are having a very interactive activity. You have the kids standing up. You have that energy flowing up in your classroom, and you're having them practice active listening, critical thinking, reflection. So you are connecting their thoughts because they have to be aware of what each of the students are sharing so that they can bring something new. And you can continue this process until each student, this is important, until each student has had a chance to share their thoughts. So when they are, passing the string and giving their points of view, yeah, as a teacher, it's important to encourage the active listening and respectful dialogue, to even inspire them or motivate them to think critically, to share what they feel curiosity, or to even reflect on what the rest of the classmates are sharing. So once you see the final result, which would look like something in the image, like a spider web, you can conclude the activity. Maybe you can ask them to sit down and they can summarize the key points that were shared. They can also reflect on what they learned from one another, what they feel curious about, what they didn't understood, perhaps what they didn't agree on. And at the end is a way to get the students introduced with the topic and learn from one another about the importance of the SDGs. Okay, so this is the first activity. It's as you hear, it's pretty easy. You don't need technology. All you need is to be prepared on how to introduce the students to the SDG. Perhaps put it in the classroom somewhere visible, the 17 SDGs, explain to them the importance, and just have them reflect on them. So now is the time for us to do this activity. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pick the 4 participants that write their names here in the chat. So the first 4 participants that write the name in the chat will be the ones that will participate in this activity. So I see Suleka, Ermin, Bushra, and Shobana. You, the 4 of you, if you can if you can, first of all, turn your camera on if you're available. We are going to practice the SDGs spider web, and we are going to do it as if we were the students, right? If we were the students in the classroom. So Suleka, you will be the participant number 1, which means you are the one that will begin to share your thoughts on why the SDGs are important, okay? And then after you, Ermin will participate. And then after Ermin, Bushra will be participant number 3. And once again, you share something about what the previous person said, or even your own reflection. And then at the end, Shobana, all right? So are you ready?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Perfect. So Suleka,
yeah,
if you want to begin, just let's try to make the participations around 20-30 seconds so that we have time for the other activities in today's webinar. Great, thank you. Suleka, go ahead, please.
I'm not able to hear you, ma'am. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, good evening, everyone. I'm Sulekha. I'm representing Gurugram Global Heights School. And SDG, they are important. They are important for the reason that we are here talking about sustainable development goals. We need to understand what are basically sustainable goals. So if I talk about sustainable goals, these are the goals which we have to meet in order to help our coming generations. So we, as a population growing day by day, I'm talking about the entire globe. I'm not talking about only India. So just because we are excelling at medical fronts, so the diseases, they are now under our control. We are having cures of various diseases. As a result, the population, it is increasing all over the globe. And the resources that we are having at present, they are not sufficient to meet the demand of the generation which presently is there on the earth. And we are very much concerned whether we are going to left this property for our future generations as well. So that's why we need to understand what are the sustainable development goals. We want the development, of course, but not at the cost of compromises which our coming generations they are going to do. So we need to do our bit in order to sustain this progress, not only for the present generation, but for the generations which would be there up after us. So that's
Thank
why
you,
this is the
Suleka.
right time to join hands so that all of us can contribute and all of us can just plan a better world to live upon. We have to
Thank
fight
you.
for the environmental changes that we can see nowadays, the problems that we can see all over the globe. And this is the time why these SDGs, they are important for us.
Great, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all
Thank
from
you,
my side.
Suleka, for sharing your point of view about the SDGs. Just be mindful of the time. We still have more activities to cover. So I will invite Hermine. And please try to keep your participation to 30 seconds so that Bushra and Shobana can also engage. Hermine, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I don't know whether everybody sees me or no, but anyway, I just want to say hi to everyone. First of all, I am from the country where USSR education was okay, but right now I can say that we trying to change everything here, as I think that communication is the first thing to involve the children, new generation, to speak or to learn any kind of language. I think that a new generation needs new methods. They need new educational system, and we have to leave after us a good, even perfect platform at schools while learning any foreign language. It doesn't matter, is it English or French or Italian? Anyway, we need to do everything just for a new generation and for a new type of children, new type of, let's say, pupils also. Thank you. This is my point of view.
Thank you, Hermine. Bushra, is there something that you heard that you would like to connect with your own point of view? Are you able to open up your microphone, Bushra? Okay, so is Shobana there? Shobana?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Shobana. We can hear you.
Yes. Uh, what I wanted to talk about SDG goals is that picking up from where Suleka and Hermine had left, there are so many global issues such as, for example, poverty, educational issues, infrastructural issues, then peace issues, then climate change issues. So SDG will help us form a coherent body where we can make policies for all these issues, coherent policies which can be followed by the different countries all over the world. We will have one policy making body where it can be used all over the world. So which will be effective, and also SDG can provide a roadmap. It'll provide a direction. Otherwise, everybody doing things at their own level, it might not just have a global effect. It could have a local effect, but not a global effect. But if you make a SDG as a global body, which is coherent, which is makes policies for the whole world, then things will be more effective. This is what I feel.
Thank you, Shobana. Amar Jaffrey, you also
Yes.
raised the hand.
Thank you,
Please
Aman. Thank you.
You are the fourth participant? You are the fourth participant? Yeah. Great, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Ammar Jaffrey from SDG Academy, Pakistan, Islamabad. To my understanding, these 17 SDGs are interconnected. You can't separate them. To my understanding, the first SDG, 6 SDGs are basic human needs. For example, hunger, poverty, health, education, balance, and clean drinking water. All others are cross-cuttings. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the humanity. I think for the first time in the history of humanity, all human beings have joined hands together for a common agenda. Up till now, there have been no common agenda for the human beings. I think we must prioritize 2 SDGs, that is SDG 3, health, and SDG 4, because these two are the basic human needs, health and education. And there's a great challenge in some developing countries, including Pakistan, where we have more out-of-school kids. But the real challenge is that how to engage everybody into it. And in the end, I would like to say that SDG 18 is now there, and that's the space economy. It is recently introduced SDG, and it has now been endorsed by the United Nations. It is not a formal SDG. The formal are only 17, but if you just Google SDG 18, it's called for space economy. Recently, I was in a foreign workshop in Malaysia. There was a great stress on the space economy because, like we have seen, we have climate change issues on this earth. The similar issues are in the space now. So I think it is the right time when through your platform, maybe some next webinar, I would like to speak on space economy and SDG 18. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity. Thank you much.
Thank you, Amar, and thank you, Chobana, Ermine, Suleka. Now, we did the previous activity, the spiderweb activity, as if we were in the classroom, okay? So each one of the participants gave their thoughts on why they believe the SDGs are important. Some of the 4 participants appreciated the previous participant for their ideas or tried to connect it. So now I would like for one of you, this is the first person that writes the name in the chat, to conclude what they saw in terms of dialogue, all right? So let's have one of you, the first person that writes the name in the chat, so it's Rupali. Thank you, Rupali. Are you able to give a very, very, very brief conclusion about what you saw in this activity?
So good evening, everyone. I am Rupali Sharkar from City Montessori School, India. So what I understood from this activity is that dialogue series is where students get a chance to exchange their views. And it's very important that they listen attentively to the previous participant so that whatever this child speaks, it is a continuation of what the previous participant has spoken. And in this way, it should go on. And everybody has to be respectful to each other and present their point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupali, for giving your conclusions about what you reflect. So now that we have seen this activity in place, even as adults, even us as teachers having a greater understanding of the SDGs, you can now begin to imagine your students in the classroom, okay? The types of ideas that they might share, the types of questions. But as you saw, this is an opportunity, a very easy opportunity to respect each other's views, to learn from one another, to continue the ideas. So that's also important, okay? This is the first activity. Please drop, if you consider that this is something you would use in the class, please drop it in the chat. If this is something you could use, or if you have any other idea, you can also write it down in the chat. Perhaps a variation, okay? Something that you say, oh, I like that idea, but I would probably do it differently, and I would do it like this, like this, like that. And of course, thank you to the 5 participants that were involved in this activity. Thank you for participating. And I like reading in the chat that you would definitely use it and that this is something that could easily be implemented in the class. So thank you. Now, if you're ready, let's move to the second activity, all right? The second activity is called Through My Eyes. And this is an activity that will involve a deeper level of understanding of the SDGs. And its main objective, as you can see here, is that the students will, through observation, of course, identify the problems that their community face. And they are going to practice using I statements, which is something very important when you talk about using dialogue. You have to teach your students to talk from the I perspective, which is I think, I believe, I have seen. So in that sense, they're not speaking on behalf of the community, but they are speaking about their own testimonials and observations and ideas and even their own experiences. What are the materials that you will need? Just a piece of paper and some markers. More or less, the duration of this activity is around 45 to 60 minutes. And the dialogue skills that you will be practicing are global communication through sharing the ideas, are active listening, and are reflection. So these three dialogue skills are the ones that your students will put in action when doing this activity. So let's take a look at the steps. What you would need to do first. All right, so the first step is to invite the students to think, of course, about the issues that they observe in their community. So this is like an icebreaker. When they are in the classroom, you ask them to think, what are those issues that are observed in their community that you think that are complex or that are something that is challenging? You can help your students reflect on this question by writing it on the board. What are the major issues that people in our community face? So in that sense, you are making them reflect. You can allow some silent time for them to think about that question. And then this is where it gets interesting. Thank you. I think there's another microphone open. Aishwarya. I think it's kind of noisy. All right. So you can do this activity as a pair activity. So ask the students to select another classmate. They are going to practice using the I statements, and they will start to describe the biggest problems that they see in their community. So you can instruct the students to say, all right, you will have 2 minutes, each of you, to share with the other classmate what are those biggest problems that you see in your community. So you can set a timer. That timer can be there where the students are, aware of how much time they have left. And then the first student will begin sharing using I statements, describing if they see something around human rights or wealth and poverty or mental health issues or climate change. And then the other student could reflect. Now, these are some sentence starters that you can either print or make visible in the classroom, where it is helpful because in this sense, you're practicing I statements. So the students can begin the conversation by saying, I think, I feel, I have observed, I'm not convinced, my faith teaches me, or even if they're trying to clarify, are you saying that? So in this sense, you can use the sentence starters as a guide for your students to get the dialogue start. All right, it's always good to teach them how to begin. So these are good example of sentence starters. Now, once they have their conversation and once they have this activity of learning from one another on what they see in their communities, you can project the image of the SDGs on the board, or you can write them on the board or print them, and then invite the students to come forward and to match what they described as a problem to the corresponding SDGs. So in that way, you're not only giving them the chance to reflect about their own experiences, but you also make it a connection with the specific SDG. And this is very helpful because now you're talking about something that is very close to the student, something that they can even see tangible at some point. You can, after that, give each student a piece of paper, some markers, and then ask them to write the reflections. In a sense, in this activity, they have a dialogue where they actively listen to one another. They use I statements. They also reflect on the SDGs that they can observe, those challenges that can be observed in their community. They connect that to the SDGs and they reflect at the end. When you close the activity, it's a good idea to ask 2 or 3 students to share the key insights, to share what they learn, and to give their main takeaways. So as you can see, this is another very easy activity that you can introduce in the class that is also collaborative, right? Even though it's only a pair, but it's interesting because now you are focusing the attention on 2 people, and their chances of getting really, really, really attentive increase, all right? So let's now proceed to the hands-on activity. Now, for this activity, I need 2 participants. So if you are from a country in the Latin American region or the Americas, if you want to participate, please write your name in the chat. If you are from the American continent, write your name in the chat. If you are from an African continent and you want to participate, please write your name in the chat. In this sense, we are trying to find 2 participants from very different regions of the world to participate in this activity. Now, I'm going to give a couple of seconds and let's see if there is one brave participant that would like to engage in this activity today. Mari Carmen. Hi, Mari Carmen. How are you? So, Mari Carmen, if you can write the country that you're from in the chat, please. And if, yes, of course. I know you, Mari Carmen. So Mari Carmen will be the first participant, and if there is somebody from the African continent and would like to come forward, that's great. And if not, we are, I appreciate Malini Bindra from India. You can be the second participant, okay? So it will be Mari Carmen from Mexico and Malini, all right? I know that Hermin and Rupali and Amar, you already participated. That was great that you had. All right, so are you ready, Mari Carmen? And Malini, are you ready? If you're ready, please open up your microphones.
Yes, I'm ready.
Thank you, Mari Carmen. Are you ready, Malini?
Yes, I am.
Great. All right. So I will introduce you to these instructions for the activity because you will be hosting the activity for us today. So let's take a look at the instructions, all right? So you will reflect on the main issues. You could probably select just one, one issue that you observe in your community, whether in the city you live in Mexico, in the city you live in India, you would use I statements to describe the biggest problems you face, all right? You will have 1 minute, each of you, to share. I will open up my microphone and say 10 seconds when you are getting close to a minute. And I will also put here an image of the SDGs after the two of you have finished, okay? So if you are ready, and Mari Carmen, would you like to go first?
Yes, sure. In my experience, nowadays in Mexico City, the issue that it's mostly, well, the most important that everyone is talking about is water issue, okay? And it is because we have a lack of water in Mexico City. So yes, it's very commonly to listen to people that has no water at home, that has no accessibility to water, and they had before. So it is really, really a contrast because they used to have it, and nowadays they don't have it. And they probably wait 3, 4, 5 days to have water in their homes. Okay, so everybody is talking about it. And it is becoming an issue because government hasn't been as effective as we want with that problem. Okay, so although they provide us some water with water tanks and buses with water tanks, so it is not enough for all the people that have no water. Okay, so I think it is really, really an issue.
Thank you, Mari Carmen. And you were a minute, exactly. So thank you. Malini, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Today, I'm going to talk about the issue of climate change or global warming that is severely affecting the city we live in specifically and India in general. The rising temperatures that we can see, the Indian summers is something that we are all aware of. But unfortunately, over the years, we are seeing that temperatures are rising higher and higher. And this time, Delhi is experiencing a heat wave that it has not experienced for the past almost 5 decades. So this climate change, which is coming in the way of temperature rise, is all because of the cutting down of trees and excessive concretization that is happening. The amount of commercialization that is coming up in our cities and the deforestation. So that is something that is really worrisome for all of us. We feel that because of this rising temperature, we are using up more and more of our
10
precious
seconds.
resources like electricity and water too. And we are already facing power outages and shortage of water for the same. So I believe we all need to work very seriously on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us as a community what you observe in your own community. So now I'm going to place this image, and you can tell me, in this case, Mari Carmen, from what you heard that Mahini has shared, where do you think that her observations, her experience relates to which of these SDGs?
I am doing it as a student.
Yes, of course.
So I'm reading them all. So I think probably number 13, because we have to take climate action, because she talks a little bit, but I think it's very important about deforestation. Okay, so I think that we can take actions that are really easy actions to make this change for good. Okay, so I think it's number 13.
Thank you, Mari Carmen. And now, Mahin, from what you heard that Mari Carmen explained about what she's seeing in the community. What do you think, or where, to which SDGs does her story connects, Mahin?
Well, I think hers connects to SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, because she spoke about the water shortage. And it could be related to 13 also, because maybe the water shortage is because of the climate change as well, global warming. But I do believe it relates more to 11.
Okay. Thank you, Mahin. And also here in the chat, people are sharing that maybe to number 6, right? To clean water and sanitation. So
Yes,
as you can see from this example, if there is one more participant that is different from Mahin and from Mari Carmen, that would like to give a reflection on what they saw, they observed in this activity, please come forward. Thank you for raising the hand, Rupali. Let's give another participant the chance so that we can have more voices. If there is anybody who would like to open up the microphone very briefly. All right. Erika? Hi, Erika.
Thank you. Thank you, Angelica.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Erika Garza. I'm also from Mexico. And I loved in this activity the fact that connections, it's awful that it's through problems, right? But the glass half full of it, I think, is that we can more easily connect with people with whom at first glance, maybe it's not obvious what we have in common. And seeing that we are sharing difficulties in different levels, in different ways, in different structures, but the fact that we can empathize with one another problems, I think brings this idea of let's work together and let's put this global citizenship idea in the front, top of our minds, and remember that we're working as a team, regardless of where we live or nationalities, whatever. I thought that was great, and I love that you, instead of saying this is a problem I brought and this is the SDG that I related with, the fact that they related the other person's problems with an SDG, I think gave a chance for this dialogue competencies to be developed. So I love the activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Erika. Thank you for giving us the conclusion of what you observed. And as you can see, this second activity, Through My Eyes is the name, is something that is easy to apply, as you saw, but it brings out these stories that creates human connections. Once again, how important it is to use dialogue to bring human connections to very pressing issues, right? And in this way, you can connect it to the SDGs. So this is the second activity. If you think that this is something you would use in the class, please write it down in the chat. As now I am going to introduce to you the last of the activities that I have prepared for you today. So the main objective of this third activity is to think about solutions. Now, this is something that Erika mentioned, that sometimes when you are already discussing these issues, using dialogue, seeing connections, you want to act. Now you want to think about solutions. So this third and last activity that I'll introduce to you today is called SDG Superheroes. And it will let your students think about solutions, what they can do together. You would use chart paper and markers, so something very easy. And more or less the duration of this activity is from more or less an hour and 40 minutes to 2 hours, all right? The most important dialogue skills that are used within this activity are active listening and also global communication, especially challenging one another ideas. So, all right. Let's take a look at the steps. Well, what you would do first is to create a small groups. So perhaps it's 3 to 4 people. You can assign a specific SDGs for them to focus on. And once the students have the SDGs, you can provide background information on that specific SDGs, perhaps give the definition or the key components. If you don't want to provide that, then the students can research, maybe as a homework, maybe in class, but they are learning about that specific SDG. And then after that, they will brainstorm and discuss potential solutions to address specifically that SDG that they have been assigned. Now they can probably, I mean, if you want, you can use the previous activity, which is Through My Eyes, and it will give them the chance to discuss what they observe in their own community so that it becomes very real. And if not, if they are assigned another SDG that probably has nothing to do with what they observe, it's okay, but because they can still research and think creatively and try to find solutions. So once they brainstorm on that specific SDG, they start writing down their proposed solutions, all right? So they do that in the piece of paper that they have. And then after that, you can ask them, okay, your solution should consider these 3 criteria. First of all, it needs to be something practical, which means something that can be realistically implemented and with the resources that are available, right, to them. It has to be affordable, which means that it can be done within a reasonable budget or maybe without budget. And it has an impact, a great impact. So maybe you are also assessing, and the students, they have to assess if that solution makes a meaningful difference, all right? So you can ask the students to write down the reflections on these 3 questions to assess the feasibility of their solution. And once they choose that solution that has the 3 criteria, they can create a poster. So now they're doing something creative. They create a poster, they represent their solution, and then they would have the opportunity to present their solution, their poster, to the class. You can give them around 7 minutes, 5 minutes, and after each of the presentations, you can ask the rest of the class to ask questions. So in this case in particular, you are giving the rest of the classroom the chance to challenge that solution, to challenge the idea, not the person. Yes, the 3rd criteria is the impact that this would have on their communities. So once they introduce, once they have the presentation, once the classmates ask questions, challenge that solution, is it feasible, is it practical, is it affordable, they can either go back and even rethink what they introduced, right? So it is also important if you, once again, provide these sentence starters to the students. Perhaps you can have it somewhere in the classroom, because if they are asking questions, it's also important to do it in a very mindful way. So perhaps if your student, a student is asking a question, they would say something like, I like that idea because, and then they would ask the question. Or maybe they would say something like, you know what, I'm not convinced that that solution is feasible because this, and that. And it gives the student the chance to think critically, to challenge the idea, to reflect, to even assess a solution. So now you're thinking about something actionable. Now the SDGs are not just an idea, are not just something that I see and observe. This is something that I can act upon. So that is why this 3rd activity, as you see, is a little bit more in depth, right? So make sure in the questioning part, which happens after each group introduces their poster. Make sure that the rest of the students, the classmates, are challenging the idea, not the person, are being respectful and using language that is respectful, are challenging and providing feedback, and not only just saying, I don't agree with your solution, I don't think that is feasible. No, they have to provide good feedback. They have to focus on what is being proposed rather than just saying, I don't agree. So they have to really prepare, come up with some real good feedback. And of course, it's important to keep that dialogue focused on is it practical? Is it affordable? Is it impactful? So in a sense, with this activity, when you wrap it up, you would emphasize how each of the students can be SDG superheroes. Each of the students can come up with solutions to address the most pressing global issues. And it will encourage your students to even go further and act upon. Perhaps there is one solution that comes up with this activity that is something that you can do as a whole class activity, something that will have an impact on your community. So this is the third activity. There is no time left for us to practice. It would take another hour, maybe, for that activity. But I want to take you to what we learned today, like the main takeaways. And the first thing is, we learn the importance or the value of dialogue. We learn how students can use dialogue to help understand complex global issues, to make those global issues relatable, impactful, to foster a more inclusive and thoughtful classroom environment, to help them reflect on the global challenges. You also receive practical applications. So there are 3 activities that are ready to use in the classroom that are very simple, but at the end, very deep in what they learn, in the learning outcomes. And of course, there is good news. You can download in this QR code, and we are also going to share the link in the chat. You can download these additional activities, but these one are particular from gender equality to climate action and to quality education. So there are 3 more activities that you can download, take a look in your own, and even apply it in your classroom, but that are specific to those 3 specific SDGs. So please go ahead and download it. Aishwarya, are you able to share the link in the chat too, so that it's easy for them? Thank you. And I would like to ask in the chat, of course, if there are any questions. We have time for 2 questions only. So if there is anything that you would like to ask, we still have 1 or 2 minutes left. Muslima Rachid is asking if they can have the resources main points as a document. You will receive an excerpt of the presentation where you can have the first activity there, but I invite you to download these extra materials that are here in the link. And also, you will look at the recording in our YouTube channel. So make sure that you follow us on YouTube as Generation Global, and you have access to the webinar. This 60 minutes that we have together, it will be there. So if there are no questions, okay. It says, Amar says, how to engage school kids in this training? Well, I will invite you, Amar, to check out our webpage. Achwarya, if you are able to share the link to the UDA here in the chat, so that Amar and all the participants can have access to our webpage, where you can see all the resources in which the students can learn to have and to practice their dialogue skills. All right, so thank you everyone for being so active in this webinar, for participating, for sharing your ideas, and I hope I can see you in the next time. Thank you.